Come back. Well, let's move away from the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank and their decision to increase interest rates by 25 basis points, 0.25%. Have a look at coalition. So the IFP, you saw Nkosini Hlabisa talking to us yesterday on the Pulse. He's confirmed the IFP and the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal had announced they had reached agreement on 21 of the municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal. So the way it's going to work is that in the councils where the IFP has more councillors, you will see that the ANC will not contest against them, and in the councils where the ANC has more councillors, the IFP won't contest their choice for mayoral committees. Meanwhile, no certainty about what's going to happen in Gauteng, the big three metros there, while in Nelson Mandela Bay, that meeting yesterday postponed until Monday. Tebogo Khaas, a political commentator, he's a trustee at Public Interest SA, he joins us. Tebogo, good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time on Newzroom Afrika this afternoon. We seem to be making, well, quite slow progress towards these coalitions. How do you describe the process that we're seeing?
Well, thank you, Stephen. Yes, there is some progress, although, of course, at snail's pace. And we've seen some mega flip-flops, especially by the IFP. But eventually, I suspect everything will be settled by the due dates, which I believe is 23rd of November. And certainly, we've seen the collapsing discussions between the ANC and the EFF. But don't be surprised if the parties do get back together and get something going insofar as coalitions in metros that matter to them.
You reckon there might still be agreements? I mean, it seems at one level, if you listen to how Julius Malema described the ANC, I mean, he described one of their negotiators, Paul Mashatile, I think he used the phrase as that crook. You have him describing Herman Mashaba as an old man who's politically illiterate. Herman Mashaba is not that old. I mean, you've got to ask yourself, I mean, could this actually be making relationships between our political parties much worse?
Look, Julius has said the worst of things about any politicians you can think of, from Thabo Mbeki. He constantly still says it, even today, about Cyril Ramaphosa. He issues invectives and insults across the board. He's an equal opportunity fluker, if I may use that Afrikaner word. But he flukes everybody, and it is not desirable, but unfortunately it's part of the political landscape that we find ourselves in. So I would rather not count too much insofar as what he's said so far, because we've seen in the past the EFF change position from one position to the other, 180-degree turns. So I wouldn't close off anything completely. But because, yes, indeed, as things stand, the ANC needs the EFF more than the EFF needs the ANC. If the ANC is hungry to still be involved in Joburg and so on. But consider what the ANC has said, and I want to believe that until somebody calls their bluff, they say they are happy to be the backbenchers. But that being the case, then it means that the DA itself may not necessarily be able to get a council in Joburg and Pretoria, for example, never mind the. So we're headed for interesting first few days. Don't be surprised if a Mercedes-Benz is donated at Lutili House, or some staff salaries are offered to be paid off by the EFF, and thus smoothing something. Hey, we've seen the worst of things around here.
Tebogo, there's so much going on behind the scenes. I mean, the Patriotic Alliance, for example, they've done a deal. They get the mayoralty of Laingsburg in the Western Cape. It's a deal with the ANC, which
made that happen. Would support it in key areas, especially in key metros, like even in Joburg, where the 1.9%, I think it's 1.9% or whatever percentage that PA had polled in Joburg, may very well be that they become their core partners in Joburg and other metros where they need them. So it is easier for the ANC to give up that small municipality than to give up, as the EFF was expecting or demanding, a metro like China, for example.
Is all of this weakening our democracy, Tebogo? I mean, we know that people are going to close doors. Maybe they'll come out with written coalition agreements. Maybe they won't. But there's so much cynicism around our politics at the moment. And if you look at our recent history, you can see why that is. But is this deepening, increasing, making worse the cynicism? And when that happens, people give up on politics. They're all corrupt. I mean, it may be true, it may not be. The point is that I think it turns people off politics. It turns good people away from politics.
That is correct, unfortunately so. And maybe just to add on that, how do you explain the IFP that says you don't do business or you don't do business or going to bed with a corrupt ANC, and they turn around and say, okay, we'll tolerate it, we'll give them our votes. So it basically doesn't mean anything that we hear from the politics. And to the extent that many people are getting disillusioned with our politics, it actually means people's votes no longer are worthy of anything because they can just be discarded or divvied upon as and how politicians wish. And it is this apathy that is creeping in, and I hope it is just a flash in the pan because it doesn't bode well for a democratic experiment if we are going to get less and less people having faith in the democratic process of elections. And yes, it is when politicians change, but it happens everywhere, Stephen. It happens even in the U.S. You've got politicians who flip-flop in Washington, like Mitch McConnell. You've got taking one position this way and flips 180 degrees. So it's politicians everywhere. So I think we have to live with the fact that this is how politics works. If we really are serious and don't want to have politicians decide on our behalf, therefore we must come out and vote in numbers and make sure that we don't have hung councils ever or again, because that's what we are at. That's a result of not participating fully in democratic process like elections.
Tebogo Khaas, thanks very much indeed. Really do appreciate it. Independent commentator.